I'm going to bring in now Robert Berger. He is in Jerusalem, a CBS News contributor for us. Robert, talk to us about what you're hearing there. You're on the ground, and what you make of what we have learned so far, not only about this first round of attacks, but as our Margaret Brennan was reporting, the idea that there will be additional waves.
There are, as far as we know already, according to what we're hearing on Israeli media, another wave and maybe a third wave. And about 100 drones are headed in this direction. Now, it's not going to be immediate. According to the Army spokesman, these drones, they're slow and they may take up to 8 hours to get here. But still, they're preparing for the possibility that some of these will get through the defenses. The defenses include a missile defense on the ground, the various anti-missile systems. There are also warplanes in the air. And, you know, Netanyahu did say that this is both defensive and offensive. And there are reports that Israel is carrying out strikes in Syria and also in Lebanon. And of course, the big question is whether Israel will retaliate inside Iran itself.
And Robert, talk to us about the assets that the U.S. has on the ground there.
The United States has,
and well, by there, sorry, let me just clarify. By there, I mean in the region.
Right. In the region, we have warships. We have a U.S., the Eisenhower Carrier Group, which is in the Red Sea. That includes both offensive and defensive capabilities, anti-missile, anti-drone capabilities. There are a couple of destroyers here in the Eastern Mediterranean near Israel. And also there are Patriot missile, anti-missile batteries and other anti-missile systems deployed across the region, I believe in Jordan and other places that could also help intercept these incoming drones.
And Robert, we were speaking earlier with Imtiaz. He was in Tel Aviv about the reaction there. Obviously, it is pretty late at night where you are there in Jerusalem. But what are you hearing in terms of how people are responding now and how people were preparing for these likely reprisals?
Well, people are going home. A couple of hours ago, you know, they were interviewing people in Tel Aviv and everybody was happy and drinking and having a good time. But now, once the Army came out with the restrictions, such as schools will be closed and that kind of thing, now everybody's concerned. The airport here, the international airport, is due to close down within the hour. So obviously, this is a very dangerous situation. People are going home, and I think people are calm but concerned. And also, it's expected that these will hit military targets and not civilian targets, these drones. So I think it's calm, but everyone is obviously very concerned.
Thank you, Robert. I also want to just note for our viewers that in Israel, it is a regular school day on Sunday. That's something that's different from here in the United States, so might not have computed necessarily. Robert, I just want to ask you, though, about the politics that are something that Margaret and I were discussing. Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister there, vowing to take appropriate response. Any sense of what that might entail?
Yeah, Israel will have to, I believe, retaliate inside Iranian territory. You can't have an attack like this from Iran and not have Israel respond. The question is, what is Israel going to do? How far will it carry its response? You know, one possibility, which is what the Israelis have been threatening to do for a long time, is to try and take out Iran's nuclear facilities. And then you would have really a major war on your hands, or they could try and perhaps limit it and close this war down in a few days. But no, this is a game changer. We've never seen Iran fire directly from its own territory. It's always used its proxies like Hezbollah in Lebanon and the Houthis in Yemen. So I expect we're going to see severe Israeli retaliation inside Iran.
Very interesting. We appreciate all of the insight that you're providing. As we understand it, officials in Jordan have also declared a state of emergency as Iran's attack on Israel is now making its way across the Middle East. Local media reports that the nation closed its airspace to incoming, outgoing, and transit flights. We're going to bring back in CBS News foreign correspondent Imtiaz Tyab. He's there in Tel Aviv. Imtiaz, I want to talk to you now about the timing. Shabbat just ended there in Israel. Passover begins on Monday. For Muslims, the Ramadan just ended on Friday. It seems like there was this one opportunity that Iran potentially had to undertake these attacks without falling on a holy day for either Jews or Muslims. Is that something that potentially was at play?
Look, things are tense here at the best of times, right?
Right.
You know, as well as sort of being, you know, this complicated region with all of these actors and players. We have this war going on in Gaza. There's obviously all of these other considerations. You know, this is the Holy Land, for lack of a better phrase. But I think when it comes to Iran, when it comes to this decision that was made to launch these drones and potentially even more than that, in fact, we've been monitoring Iranian state media, and the language they're using is quite interesting. They didn't just say or confirm that drones were launched, they also used the word missiles as well. Now, what that means, we don't know. We don't have any reports that missiles have been launched from Iran. But if that is part of the longer strategy, as this night progresses, it could be potentially very concerning. But to answer your broader question, look, it's very clear that after that embassy attack in Damascus, and this is U.S. Government confirming that when Israel targeted the Iranian embassy in Damascus, and you see those images, that building was completely destroyed. A number of people were killed, including a very senior Iranian military commander, that Iran felt it needed to respond in a considerable way. And of course, they said so. They said, we will respond. This was a violation. And now we have these drones that are on their way. And I just want to read to you very quickly a statement we've just received from the Israeli military, from the Israeli military spokesman Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari. He said, and again, I'm quoting here, Iran has launched a direct attack from Iranian soil towards the state of Israel. We're closely monitoring, and again, I'm quoting here, Iranian killer drones that are en route to Israel sent by Iran. This is a severe and dangerous escalation. Our defensive and offensive capabilities are at the highest level of readiness, again, ahead of this large-scale attack from Iran. That coming from Israel's main military spokesperson, describing it as a large-scale attack. But again, as we've been saying, Lana, these drones, as far as we know, will take quite a while to get here, at least 9 hours to travel all the way from Iran to Israel. And as we've been hearing from Margaret and from others, it's very likely that the U.S. could intercept those. We've also been hearing that the Jordanians have suggested that they may intercept those drones. And that's because beyond Israel, there are actors in this region, including the U.S., of course, Jordan, which neighbors Israel, who do not want to see a wider escalation spread across this region. It is deeply concerning to them. But the reality is for the first time, Iran has overtly carried out a strike towards Israel. That in itself is extremely significant. And as we've been hearing, Israel will feel compelled to respond, whether or not these drones even make it here. Lana.
As we're talking about the necessity of response for foreign governments, I'm reminded of the January drone strike that killed American personnel. Those were also Iranian drones. Remind us, just in terms of context, Imtiaz, about some of the major things that happened between October 7th and today that led us to this point.
Yeah, look, we have this awful war unfolding in Gaza. We have over 30,000 people killed, the majority of them women and children, and it is horrendous. We've had the October 7th attacks in which 1,200 Israelis were killed. We've had so much pain in that very specific sphere, but if you widen the aperture, we've seen regionally the region really become shaped by this. To the north, you have Israel's border with Lebanon, in which almost daily daily they've been trading fire with Hezbollah, which of course is very much aligned with Iran, backed by Iran. We've also had the Houthis in Yemen, who have been targeting shipping vessels in the Red Sea. In fact, just today, doing a ship we understand is owned by an Israeli billionaire. We've had other strikes on U.S. forces, as you rightly point out, across the region, proxies that are backed or supported by Iran. All of this has been happening at the same time. And although it's been extremely concerning for anyone, and more importantly, has been articulated very clearly, specifically from President Biden, who has said he does not want to see this conflict in Gaza spread across the region, we now have these drones being launched from Iran towards Israel. And the fear is that amidst all of these other things that have happened, that this could be that match that really inflames the region. But as we've been hearing, again, from the president himself, again, we've heard, from the Iranian leadership saying that they don't want to see an escalation, but that they had to respond to Israel's attack on their embassy inside of Damascus, causing those casualties, destroying that building. Again, that's just by way of explanation, what Iran says. And so all of this happening all at once has really had this region on edge, for lack of a better phrase. And again, the concern is this the tipping point? Are we going to see this conflict spread and other countries become involved? And that, of course, would be disastrous on so many levels for so many people. And it's obviously understandable why President Biden doesn't want to see something like that happen. But we have to consider that Israel and the Israeli leadership are also watching this, saying we have to now respond to this too, that we are now being directly targeted by another state. And whatever happens, however, if these drones even reach Israel, it still was launched towards and directed at Israel, and that they will have to do something. And so it is extremely worrying. It's very alarming. And the next few hours will tell us a lot about what could potentially happen next. Lana.
Imtiaz, you referenced something that, honestly, in all the discussions that we've had so far in this time period since learning about the launch of those drones, we haven't even discussed. I'm hoping you can tell our viewers more about the paramilitary Revolutionary Guard seizing that container ship in the Straits of Hormuz, and about how that is also something that just happened today, Saturday, and how that fits into this larger picture.
Yeah, I mean, it just speaks to the fact that what happened on October 7th and everything that's happened since isn't getting quieter, it isn't calming down, it is doing the opposite. It is becoming more fraught, more intense, more alarming, and more concerning. What we're seeing is escalation. And the Biden administration from the very beginning has been trying to contain this. You remember back in October, we heard that the Biden administration, or we learned later, had to work extremely hard to really deter the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu not only go into Gaza, but to potentially launch an assault against Hezbollah in the north. And as we've been saying, there's been relatively low-level conflict. Some would argue slightly more than low-level, but it's not been to the extent that, of course, we've seen in Gaza, but that the president really was able to convince Prime Minister Netanyahu to not also go into Lebanon as well, again, because of this concern of this becoming a regional war, a regional conflict. But the war in Gaza is now over 6 months. We've seen the devastation there. We've seen the high civilian casualty. And so across the region, you have Arab countries looking with their population saying, what are you doing about Gaza? What are you doing about Israel? Again, by way of explanation. And so Iran, which, again, has been involved in so many of these proxy battles with Israel, with the U.S. and elsewhere, the fact that it was so directly targeted by Israel in Damascus, again, as we've been saying, it felt so compelled that it needed to do something. But as we've been saying, the real fear here is that as all of these things happen at once, could this lead to something more serious? And the short answer is we just don't know, because whatever happens in the next couple of hours, it's really then up to Israel to decide what Israel wants to do. And that is why the U.S. is working so closely with the Israelis. Of course, this, rock steady relationship. But more importantly, again, everything that we've seen from the president, everything we've heard is that what they want to prevent is a wider regional conflict from spreading. And I'm more than certain that when President Biden speaks with Prime Minister Netanyahu, and we don't know if they have spoken to each other directly yet, that he will be appealing for calm, to de-escalate the situation and to not let this spread into a regional war.
All right. Imtiaz, thank you.